Good morning. It's great to see all of you here this morning. What a spectacular Montana morning. It's too bad that we can't have the curtains open, but then you'd all be looking out the window instead of paying attention, and we don't want that. But it is delightful to have all of you here on such a wonderful morning. You need to work with me to keep this weather pattern going through at least Saturday when we're having commencement outside. It is a pleasure to welcome you here this morning to the University of Montana campus for Missoula EDU. This is a wonderful event that follows on really several years of discussion between Missoula County Public Schools and the University of Montana. We've been talking and taking this to a new level today in exploration of how we can partner to advance learning environments that foster student engagement and success in this global century. This truly is a partnership, and I want to just say a few words about people who are in attendance today. So certainly we have many folks from the University of Montana, many folks from the Missoula County Public School District, and thank you all for the commitment you've shown both in preparing for today but also attending today. But I also want to make special note that Mayor Ingen is here, and this is a partnership that very much includes the community. And John, we're so happy to have you here. Thanks for your support with all of this. I also want to recognize that we have many members of the business community here as well. And it's a rare relationship, I think, a rare community that has such strong support and interest on the part of the business community. So I want to give a special thank you to all of you here from Missoula's business community. I think that's terrific support, and we won't succeed in our goals as a community without the support of the businessmen and women of Missoula. I also want to take note that we have, from my perspective as a university employee, two members of the Board of Regents here. Our chair, Regent Angela McLean, is here, and one of our newest regents, Regent Pat Williams, is here as well. So would you join me in giving a round of applause for all those special guests that are here today? This is a time of the year for celebration. We do have commencement coming up. The school systems, districts, and so on are having commencement as well. This is the time of the year where we really do recognize the wonderful accomplishments of our students. The primary reason we are here as a university, as a school district, is to open doors and help students fulfill their dreams. And so this is such a wonderful time of the year when we actually get to celebrate those student accomplishments and remind ourselves of the importance of the work that we do as educators. So this summit highlights our joint commitment to transforming education, pre-K through graduate school, to showcase some of the advances at the university, within the public school district, and within the business community. During this conference this morning, we'll explore the compelling need for creativity and innovation within the education community. We'll highlight some of the partnerships between the university and the school district that show progress in our classrooms that cultivate the critical outcomes that we need in today's world. We'll show examples of building creative capacity to further the position Missoula has as a forward-thinking educational community on the leading edge of combining and partnering between the business world and educational world. So we're glad to have you here. We invite each of you to join us today in our efforts to make Missoula a national model for community collaboration, innovation, and student success. From the university's point of view, this effort is so consistent with our new strategic plan, UM 2020, Building a University for the Global Century. The global century is all about partnership, all about working together to make sure that our students leave our institutions ready for the challenges and opportunities of today's world. We want and we expect our graduates from this community to be leaders in Montana, in Missoula, across the nation, and around the world. That's what today is about. It's my pleasure now to introduce to you someone who I consider my partner in educational innovation, Dr. Alex Apostle.
Thank you, President Engstrom. People talk about collaboration. We hear that term used frequently these days about people coming together to make a difference. Well, here in Missoula, with the help of all of you and the University of Montana, Mayor Engen, and the city, we are exemplifying true collaboration. And it's going to take true collaboration to make a difference for our students in the 21st century. The public schools cannot do this alone. Everyone needs to come together with identified roles and responsibilities so that we can move public education where it needs to be, to make sure that America stays number one. We will begin the summit by taking a look forward. What can and should the Missoula community do to ensure our students are leaders who truly can win on the world stage, innovate for the future, and contribute to an enriched quality of life in their communities? In response to student needs in the 21st century, we will then explore a variety of innovations and partnerships currently in place at the University of Montana, within the Missoula County Public Schools, and the business community. We will end our morning with a conversation about two separate initiatives currently underway at the University of Montana and the Missoula County Public Schools, and a call to action where we as a community will explore how we might continue to leverage support for these initiatives. It's basically everybody coming together in terms of these two major initiatives. Our major initiatives in the Missoula County Public Schools are, of course, Schools for the 21st Century and Graduation Matters Missoula, which is now Graduation Matters Montana. And they articulate quite nicely with the two initiatives at the university, global leadership and student success. So we're on our way to great things, and today is a launch of everything that we believe in terms of public education. Thank you.
Before introducing our first speaker, I would like to acknowledge the tremendously hard work of the people who organized this conference. And so I know that you're out there, and I'm not going to call you by name, but would all of you who have been part of the committee in organizing today's event, please stand and let us thank you for your work. So. Thank you for the hours that you've put in preparing for today, but more importantly, for the creativity that you've shown in putting this conference together. Again, this is a pretty unique opportunity for us to come together the way we are today. It's my pleasure now to introduce a member of the university community who really exemplifies the idea of creativity, and that is Professor Rick Hughes. Rick is one of the founding faculty members of the School of Media Arts at the University of Montana, and for the past 25 years has played a leading role in the integration of digital technology and the arts. Since 2006, he has served as the director of the School of of the School of Media Arts, and beginning in 2011 was appointed Director of Academic Affairs for Online, a division of our School of Extended and Lifelong Learning. In 1992, Rick developed one of the first online music theory courses for America Online. By 1977, when the new media arts program was being formed, he created courses in the areas of digital still image, motion, web, and sound design that remain at the core of the school's curriculum today. His current area of research is the development of online learning technologies for education. Would you please join me in welcoming Professor Rick Hughes? Rick?
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here. I want to was going to get this out first. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm going to talk about a couple of things here, and I'm going to wander a little bit, so I'll apologize in advance. As Royce mentioned earlier, I have two roles here at the university. One is the School of Media Arts, and one is with Online. I wanted to start by saying that this is not just another conference. And when Lisa asked me if I would speak at this after our XLI conference a month or so ago, or a couple of months ago, I jumped at the chance because I have a sense of urgency right now. I wake up every morning and it's a very emotional thing for me. I'm not going to apologize for it. I go to school, I drive to the university, I get out, and I'm greeted by undergrads and graduate students. I have the pleasure of working. I taught for many years with little kids. I've taught in inner city schools, I've taught in high schools, I've taught in a whole bunch of places. And since coming to Montana, I've had the pleasure of working with everyone from freshmen, 17-year-old kids coming out. I've taught in the Schwanke Institute in the summers where I worked with high school kids who were preparing for college, and I work with graduate students. So I get a range of students that I get to work with, and every day I come to school and I can feel crappy, I can feel whatever, but when I walk into that building and these kids, or these folks I should say, come into my office, I have an open door policy unless I'm yelling at someone or whatever, but it's basically doors open, come in, sit on the couch, what's going on out there? And I go home, I swear to God, I go home every single night with a new idea and a new perspective about what is going on out there. And so it got me thinking about this, this convergence that's going on. So what I wanted to do is set the stage a little bit here for you. I mean, I think you all know this, but I think we need to be reminded. And right now, which is what makes this thing so critical, you make comparisons a lot of times to the beginning of the 20th century and the Industrial Revolution. But right now, there's what I refer to as a great convergence that's going on. And these two things have matured, and they've come together in a perfect storm. And it started, in my opinion, around 2009, 2010, something like that. So we're at the very beginning of this. And that is the democratization of digital technology, which means I can pull out a movie production studio out of my pocket. I can have a video conference right now with a friend of mine in Beijing. Well, they're probably sleeping right now, but you know what I mean. And I don't have to be a rocket scientist to do it. I can press a few buttons. It's here. It's been democratized. You'll hear, some of you will hear from Hatton Littman later on today, I think. I think Hatton's part of this. With a class that we developed called Cell Phone Cinema. And when we were trying to develop a class for our filmmakers, Hatton and I talked about it, and the only thing I didn't want to do was have another screenwriting course or another filmmaking course, and we have a lot of those. And I said, well, can we do something with cell phones? And because they're all shooting, so we came up with Hatton came up with Cell Phone Cinema. Let's call it Cell Phone Cinema. But the idea was, I don't know if Hatton's in the room or not, but I think that conversation lasted, there she is, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it was, right? And it was, I mean, if they've all got a movie studio in their pocket, why are we not providing them the opportunity in an educational environment to maximize that potential? So we grabbed a select group of students, and we've had a very successful cell phone cinema class, and they make movies that are now up on the web, and the only rule was you can only use your cell phone. That's the first thing, the democratization of tool sets. Photoshop is everywhere. After Effects is everywhere. Final Cut, Premiere, video editing, it's everywhere. 5-year-olds can do this, literally. The other thing is the hyper-connected network culture that we live in. So these two things coming together have not only created the ability to make work, be it science or art. I will be speaking primarily from the artistic standpoint today, but it could be applied to anything. But the fact that we can share this, we can collaborate. The boundaries, as Tom Friedman said, the world is flat. The boundaries are gone, or they're almost gone. So what do we do? That's the environment we find ourselves in today. That's why I said we're not in Kansas anymore. I didn't mean to disparage anyone from Kansas. I know Peggy was like, what are you doing, dude? But the reason I said Kansas was because when Dorothy opened the door, her first reaction was, damn, this is cool. Look at this. Munchkins, flowers, witches. Then eventually she wanted to go home. She was like, enough of this. Let me click my heels, and I want to go home. What the graduate students understand is you ain't going home. We're not going home. We're here. We're here. This is it. So in the early days, there was a lot of trepidation. I spent, and I'll talk about this in a second, but I spent a fair amount of time trying to convince people that this is not a fad. The internet is not, and it sounds silly coming out of my mouth right now, but the internet is not a fad. And not long ago, I still have these conversations. I had a conversation about a month ago with a teacher. I work in another graduate program. I'm not disparaging this teacher, brilliant woman, wonderful thing. The internet has no place in this program. Okay? My reaction was, I won't even say what my reaction was because we're probably taping this, right? My reaction was not good. My reaction was, how dare you? It's all going on inside my head, but how dare you? Really? I mean, you're saying to me that because you're uncomfortable with it, you're going to deprive these students of the opportunity to maximize their learning moments. How dare you, is how I felt. I was a little pissed off, frankly. I'm not saying we have to jump to online, but I am saying that you open your eyes, you take an honest, objective look at the world, as my grad students like to say, the world that we actually live in, and you try and maximize that potential. The vast majority of folks do, which I think is the really good news here today. That's the other really good news. Let me give you just some very brief history, and poke me when I'm done, because I've lost track of time. I just want to talk about a couple things. Well, number one, I go into class a lot, and I'll say 1969. I'll throw that year out there. And when I do that to a room full of 50-year-olds, the first word that comes out of their mouth usually is Woodstock. When I say that to some other groups of people, the first word out of their mouth is the moon landing. So it's either Woodstock or the moon landing. And I've done this every semester in my class. I go, okay, 1969, it's always Woodstock or the moon landing. And I go, okay, anything else happening? Nothing. Nothing comes out. 1969 was in October, was the month, 2 months after Woodstock, when Leonard Kleinrock at Stanford sent the first message, or sent the first file over what was then called the ARPANET and turned into the internet. You had the birth of the internet in October of 1969. Now, in 1969, I was a hell of a lot more focused on Woodstock, frankly, than I was on anything else. But the fact of the matter is, this was a monumental thing. The other thing I do is I show a picture of Kitty Hawk, of the plane, and I go, what is that? Everybody, Kitty Hawk, Wright brothers. Then I show a picture of a computer in a little glass case, an old just stupid monitor and keyboard, and it's just sitting there. I go, what's that? Nobody knows what this is. That's the computer that Tim Berners-Lee used to invent the World Wide Web. On that machine, with a little Next computer, which, by the way, was designed by Steve Jobs of Apple after he got fired. So let me take you back to the early 80s. And these are my milestones. And there's a couple of them. One was what's called MIDI and the DX7. So some older musicians out there might know what I'm talking about. But MIDI, M-I-D-I, stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And the Yamaha DX7 was the first commercially successful digital synthesizer, which could play, anything from cellos to flutes to people screaming or whatever. And I was in a recording studio in 1983 with our 2-inch tape and our scissors and our musicians, and I was writing off the scores by hand. Nope, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that's what I was doing. And we paid lots of money for all these people to come in and record the commercials and do our things, and it was cool. We loved it. A friend of mine calls me up at the end of one session. Now, I'm a young guy, and I think I'm, hot to trot here in the recording studio. And he calls me up, he says, I got something to show you. So he said, our session's over in a couple hours, come on over. So he comes over and he walks in with this keyboard and this little computer, and it's a little Mac computer and it's a keyboard, and he puts it down in the studio and he plugs it in, and we're like, what the hell is that? And it's MIDI. And he starts playing the keyboard, the Yamaha DX7, recording it into the computer, and then playing it back with different sounds. It seems silly now, because little kids have Casios and whatnot, and you can play all sorts of stuff. Is that what I have left? Okay. Thank you. That's really like right there. That's good, actually. So to me, I was in a room, and I think if I recall correctly, about 6 of us or 7 of us. And everyone in the room, or maybe 8 of us, everyone in the room except myself and my friend next to me went, that's cool. Whatever, And then they went about their business. And my friend turned to me, who was a stunningly good piano player, turned to me and said, this is going to change everything. That was the word, that was the sentence out of his mouth. This is 1983. And that kind of shook me, and I started thinking about, well, what if? What are the possibilities of this thing? And sure enough, you cannot go to the movies right now. You cannot. You cannot watch a television show without listening to sampled and synthesized sound. Sorry. It's everywhere. It's very nice to think that Spielberg can pay John Williams to have the big orchestra up there, and good for him. But if you think that that's how all of them are done, you're just wrong. It's just not done that way, because you can't afford to do it that way. And I have some friends in LA who are doing very well, actually. And what they say is it's all synthesized, and they bring in 1 or 2 humans to play, and they add them together. And I'm not making a value judgment on it. I'm just saying that's the reality. So one of the things for me was that was my milestone, because I looked at that and I went, okay, I've got to do this. And I went out the next week and I bought my first DX7, and I bought my first Macintosh computer. And so now I had the thing, and I went home, and there was no one to call, there was no teacher to go to, there was no class to take. I had a box and a keyboard. What the hell do I do with this? And I went, and there was no Google. There was nothing. I had to go figure this out. And we did. The second thing were the walled gardens, AOL, and Royce mentioned that I worked with AOL in the early 90s. AOL came along, and CompuServe and Genie, and these proprietary online sort of systems. They were like little country clubs that you could join if you wanted to. They were anywhere from $10 to $50 a month. I joined CompuServe and America Online. And America Online said, we want to do these forums, but we want to start teaching people. This is, I think, 91, I think. So I developed this text-based music theory class where I was working with people in Texas and Florida, and it was really cool. I was living in New Jersey and having these text messaging things with folks around the country. And it was, by today's standards, it was absurd. But the fact of the matter is, people would come over to my house and they go, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm teaching this person in Texas about harmonic minor scale or whatever it was. I got content, and I thought, this is awesome. I'm going to love this. Well, little do I know, because I'm kind of a moron sometimes, and I wasn't paying attention to the world I was actually living in. I got content with my iPhone or my whatever. And I didn't realize that at that exact same time in Switzerland, Tim Berners-Lee is working at CERN, developing what would become the World Wide Web. And because he went to his supervisors and said, I've got a really good idea. And they had the foresight to say, you know what, that's not how we do things here. But take Fridays off and go work on this thing, because I think you're onto something. So they had the foresight to say, no offense to the rules and regulations, but this guy's onto something. Let's give him the support he needs. Same thing they do at Google right now, by the way. You take that Friday afternoon, you take a day to yourself so that you can let those gray cells, as Poirot says, let the gray cells work. Let them do their job. So Tim Berners-Lee invents the World Wide Web. I find out about this a couple of years later, and my second sort of aha moment, if you will, and I went, oh boy. I'm selling all my America Online stock, that's for sure, because this thing is about to blow the walled gardens out of the water, which is exactly what they did. The web blew them out of the water. You don't see CompuServe, you don't see Genie. You see America Online, but for different reasons. So the walled gardens came in, and the World Wide Web was born. And one of the things that I've done, it's not that I'm smarter than other people or anything, or more talented, but I've always got my eyes open. And I think that's one of my messages today, is we tend to get content with what we know. And okay, I've got my iPhone, or I've got my iPad, or I've got my Moodle, or whatever it is. And we get content. Yet, right now, there are people out there developing new and unbelievably exciting things. Driverless cars are now legal in Las Vegas. Well, what isn't legal in Las Vegas? But the whole idea of automated cars, I mean, this is kind of crazy, but the fact of the matter is this is coming. At the XLI conference, I had a thing up on the board that went back to 2005, I think, or 4, when we were developing the School of Media Arts. And at the time, they were like, oh, these guys are forward-thinking, tech, arts, all this stuff. And I began to just list all of the things that did not exist when I was sitting there with my colleagues developing the curriculum for what was to become this kind of forward-thinking digital technology in the arts school. No Google, no YouTube, no iPad, no iPhone. I mean, the whole, whoever was there, it was just filled with stuff that today we take for granted, simply did not exist. And at the end of my talk, I started putting things up on the board today that we don't know about, that are in beta mode, that they're working on. There's tons of them. A few years ago, I was teaching a group of teachers, actually, in the Creative Pulse program. I put up a picture of a 2-year-old girl who had earbuds in. She had a Wacom tablet. She had Illustrator or Photoshop up there. She had all this tough stuff, and she was there. And the thing I liked about it, the image was, this is a 2-year-old who understood. And when I was 2, I was like scratching my head and picking my nose. This girl understood that this thing, if I scratch this thing nothing happens. But if I go to this tablet, it makes that move. She had made that cognitive leap. She got it. The picture was great because the focus that this kid had was unbelievable. And we captured it. And at the bottom, I said the caption of the photo was 2020. I didn't know about the 2020 thing, but this was years ago. It said 2020. And you could have heard a pin drop in the room. Karen, you might have been there, I don't remember. But you could have heard a pin drop. And finally, one of the teachers raised her hand and said, what does 2020 mean? And I said, in 2020, she's yours. And you could just see the blood drain from their faces because they're sitting there going, oh my God, this girl's already ahead of me, and she's 2. And so I've got to do this. I've got to learn this. The good news of that day was that they didn't go away. They went, bring it on. What do we need to do to learn this? And that's what's beginning to happen. There's a reality, and I'll wrap it really quickly. There's a reality here. We have the technology. We don't even need, and this will be good news, I think, to Royce and Perry, we don't need to throw lots of money at this stuff. It's not about money, really. We have so much technology at our disposal right now. Right now. I have a class in September with 12 kids from Taiwan who are going to be having a semester-long class with 6 of our media arts students from Taiwan, Taipei to be exact. And they're going to be working on a project. It cost, above and beyond the normal cost of internet connections in the building, it cost nothing. It was a phone call. It was a phone call that Robert Squires made. Basically, I know a woman who teaches at DeLynn, let's see if we can hook this up. We did a video conference, we laid out the curriculum, done deal. We're doing it. So by December, these 6 or 8 media arts students are going to have an experience with these kids in Taiwan that they would never have ordinarily had. I'd love to send them to Taiwan, but I don't have $15,000 to send these kids over. So the technology is here. You'll hear all about that today. The question is, we can do this, and what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? I mean, I don't mean to get crazy here, but my last thing is, I'm getting tired of walking around campus and hearing reasons why we shouldn't do this. Well, we can't do this because, we can't do this because, well, we can't do that. And I keep saying, why not? Martin's a great example. Martin's first question in the morning, I think, buddy, is what if? Well, what if we do this? He'll call me and go, what if we do this? I don't know. Let's try it. What's the worst that can happen? I have an iPad right here. This is a great thing. Does anybody remember the Newton? Yeah, it was a failure. They stopped making it because it didn't really work the way they wanted to, but if you don't do that, you're never going to get to the iPad. So my plea to everyone in this room is we can do this. What are we waiting for? Take incremental steps, look out your window, talk to your kids, talk to the students. They will tell you what the way the world actually is out there in terms of this digital technology. And I think it's more important, and we're more relevant than ever. My last sentence, then I stop. So many teachers come up to me and they say, but I'm afraid of being irrelevant. Why are they going to need me? Some of these kids, I've asked a bunch of them, what happens when you have a problem? What do you do? And one student about 2 months ago said to me, I don't go to the teacher, I go to Google. It was like a knife through my heart. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, why? I go to Google. I want an answer. And so my faculty friend said, well, that makes me irrelevant, so now I feel terrible. I'm like, no, you're more relevant than ever, but your role has to change. Your role has to change. We have to change. And we have to look at the situation, we have to figure out what do we do? How do we help these kids and how do we help ourselves? We can do this, there's no question in my mind. That's why I wake up every day. I'm 60 years old and I got more energy now than I did when I was 35, swear to God. And the reason is because I go to work with these kids and they are staggeringly energetic about this stuff. They're going to go figure out what they need to do. And I'm done. Thank you. Please open your minds. Be as objective as you can. It's not going to hurt. Ask questions. Ask and learn. And I think everything will be just peachy. And we have a very exciting future ahead of us, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Professor Rick Hughes for helping us understand the changes needed to successfully adapt to the convergence of two powerful forces, the democratization of digital technology and a hyper-connected global network. At this time, I'd like to introduce Missoula Mayor John Engen, who will be serving as the facilitator for our business panel, where we will continue to look forward that Professor Hughes helped us with just a moment ago. John Engen is Missoula's 50th mayor. He was born in Missoula in 1964, attended Willard Elementary School, Hellgate High School, and the University of Montana, where he earned a bachelor's degree in journalism. Before serving as mayor, he served as a term as a city council member, was an award-winning writer, and editor for the city's daily newspaper, owned and operated his own small business, and volunteered for a variety of Missoula's nonprofit organizations. Thank you as well to our business panelist members and John Engen for joining us today.
Thank you very much. So part of my role here as a facilitator for the panel is trying to make the panel comfortable enough that it can engage freely in an open and thoughtful dialogue. The way I chose to do that this morning was by spilling coffee all over myself on the elevator, thereby sort of getting that out of the way for folks. I have a choice here, however, because I spilled coffee on myself, I could actually remove the sweater with the coffee stain, but I elected to wear a white shirt underneath the sweater. So really, we're sort of stuck with this, folks, and I apologize for that right now. You know, it's interesting to me to hear Rick. It occurs to me in my service as mayor that the status quo is easy, and the status quo is really where leaders feel all the pressure. Change is tough, and we are largely encouraged as leaders and innovators to sort of keep things the same. The challenge every day is to recognize that our jobs isn't to maintain the status quo. Our job is all about adapting and changing, and making fabulous things happen in our community, and our communities range from the broader picture to the classroom to the living room. Wanted to also recognize today we have at least 2 city council members. I see Councilman Weiner is here today and Councilwoman Koppel are here today, both energetic folks who get that these relationships between education and government and economy, we are inextricable today, and that's a good thing, I think. Folks, our panel today is about taking risks and reaching out, and I will introduce our panelists and I will read their biographies in an effort to make sure I don't miss anything. First, we have Brigitte Miranda Freer. She is the Director of Business Development for the Missoula Economic Partnership. My friend Brigitte works in her current capacity. She's responsible for business expansion and recruitment efforts in addition to implementation of special projects such as the Innovation Initiative, our Angel Network, the Air Service Task Force, and she currently serves on boards for the College of Technology as well as the Montana Economic Developers Association. Before joining the partnership in June of 2011, Brigitte worked as Membership Services Manager at the Montana World Trade Center, where she counseled businesses on their exporting endeavors, routinely facilitating export sales linkages between U.S. clients and appropriate in-country partners. She also handled special projects, including trade missions and the World Trade Center Student Practicum. Brigitte has worked in international sales and marketing for Winner International and Montera Incorporated, as well as for Washington, D.C. based nonprofit Citizen Network for Foreign Affairs and the Inter-American Bar Association, which I think has to do with, okay, good, it's a legal thing, right? Yeah. Brigitte is a graduate of American University in Washington, D.C., the mother of 2 young, highly energetic children who are enrolled in the Missoula County Public School System. She's an avid runner and a consummate Missoula-phile. Susan Maruka is the project manager for SimBio and is a kindred spirit to experiential learners everywhere. Through her work with SimBio, a small Missoula-based software company, she helps produce digital educational tools, that's virtual labs and ebooks, that use interactive mathematical simulations to teach biology in an inquiry-driven learning style. After studying physics, mathematics, and biology, pretty much the polar opposite of everything I studied, and graduate school, Susan began a 3-pronged career comprised of teaching, developing software, and researching biological questions with models. By joining the SimBio team in 2001, she merged all 3 of those interests into a single rewarding profession. Susan is SimBio's project manager and biological modeler. She coordinates a team of highly creative experts, including biologists, designers, and programmers who build dynamic digital media so that biology students everywhere can learn more effectively and have fun in the process. James Stevens is the President, Chief Science Officer, and Chief Executive Officer of Blue Marble Biomaterials and has an extensive technical and business background in product development for industrial microbiology, chemical engineering, and food safety, from bench-level research to commercialization. He also has years of management experience bringing new products to the market. In the time before Blue Marble, he worked in the industrial microbiology sector, developing food safety products from bench-level research again, all the way through to sales with Fortune 500 companies, including Cargill, Costco, Safeway, and Tyson Foods. Mr. Stevens also performed similar product development for a Chinese firm, managing all microbiological related research, product development, and manufacturing scale-up for a wide variety of products, including medical diagnostics, pharmaceuticals, and industrial microbiological products. Holy cow. Since 1999, he's been continuously involved in independent consultation on defense projects, environmental remediation, and industrial microbiology production. As a Montanan and a University of Montana graduate, James is an active community leader who works with the community on economic development issues, works closely with the local university, that's us, and sits at the Montana Wood Products Retention Roundtable. And last but not least, Michael McGill is the Executive Director of Missoula Children's Theater Incorporated. Michael serves as Executive Director of the organization that's home to the Missoula Children's Theater and the MCT Community Theater. Michael has a performance degree and began his association with MCT in 1977. He's held a variety of positions, including tour actor, director, personnel director, and music director, and became the executive director in 2006. He oversees more than 50 employees at MCT headquarters and 94 souls who are touring nationally and internationally. Michael's written 12 original shows and 28 musical scores, and is currently writing Blackbeard the Pirate. Mr. McGill has directed more than 50 plays and musicals, including acclaimed productions of Oliver in 2008 and Irving Berlin's White Christmas in 2010. He also loves to perform and has played roles such as Sweeney Todd and various characters in MCT touring shows. Our panelists, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to give them a... And Jane Bennett has provided me a clock and strict instructions to do exactly what I'm told. I always follow principal's orders. Therefore, I will be paying careful attention to Jane and trying to keep us on track here, folks. So we have 2 questions, and you all have 4 minutes apiece to engage in the answers of those questions. And the first is, how do you experience imagination, creativity, and innovation in your field? And Susan, can we begin with you, please?
Push. There you go. Hello. Oh, good. Okay. So thank you, Mayor Ingen. As Mayor Ingen said, I work for Symbio. We produce software that uses interactive mathematical models to help teach biology. And the hallmark of our work is that it's inquiry-driven. So we believe students learn science by doing science, and you could pretty much substitute any word for science. People learn by doing. So our tenet really is to show, then tell. And we believe education is much more effective when we accomplish this. So really, I am representing the world of educational technology here on the panel. We like to think of it as instructional design. We think of ourselves as designers. And I think that probably some of what I'm going to talk about in terms of how we experience imagination, innovation, creativity in this field could apply pretty broadly to all sorts of technological design and also to all sorts of instructional design, not just that which uses technology as the focus. So to kind of set the stage a little bit, and then I'm going to actually show you some of what we produce, I want to talk about what our constraints are for instructional design when we set about to try to teach something with a piece of technology. We believe that effective instructional design fosters fun primarily, interactivity and discoverability. So we use games and models. The materials should honor the real world. This is really important for us because games and models are invented. So we're inventing virtual worlds to teach with. We must make it relevant, keep it relevant, and grounded in the real world. We believe that appropriate instructional design scaffolds learning stages because people don't learn everything all at once. This is why even though Google is really useful, it's never going to replace a teacher because it's nothing but just a giant amount of information. There's no synthesis, there's no scaffolding, there's no ability to discern what's relevant and important to your question. You have to basically, in the form of teaching, you need to be able to put yourself in the position of the student and build up to complete understanding. So we kind of latch onto this phrase that we call scaffolding. We let students drive because if we own the instruction, then we own the learning, and that doesn't help. So the students need to drive the bus, and you'll see what I mean when I show you. We believe that technology needs to be used well. It's a tool for a job, and technology is everywhere. It's pervasive, it's amazing, and yet it is a tool for understanding. So I think it's super cool what we can do with technology, and we are in constant need of people who understand how to employ technology, and we are in constant need of those people also being able to have a broader understanding of the world around them. And perhaps most importantly, we believe that effective instructional design is beautiful, it's elegant, it's simple, and it's intuitive. And if it's not, then it doesn't work. And I have spent countless hours watching students try to interact with technology that is poorly designed because it's too busy, it's too clunky, you can't find the button to do what you need to do, et cetera, et cetera. And so the principles of design are something that I think needs to be emphasized more and more in education in order to prepare folks for the world of technology. So with that, I want to show you a little bit about what we do, because you guys have been listening, so maybe it would be fun to actually see something happen. So what I'm going to show you, can I scoot this over? Can I make this work? Okay.
Susan, you want to use the handheld?
Oh, that would be fun. Okay, thank you. All right, so we had a project with the National Science Foundation to try to develop educational tools using digital software to identify and dispel misconceptions around evolution. So one of the misconceptions / confusions that we discovered among students, and this is from middle school, high school on, is that folks don't know what it means that the fossil record supports the theory of evolution. And we're not even talking about natural selection here. We're just that organisms basically show a pattern of traits in the fossil record that indicate evolution, descent with modification, if you will, from a common ancestor. So we have this really fun lab that we developed. Oh, here we go. Called Evolutionary Evidence. And in this lab, we basically have the students see how these patterns are developed, and they do it two ways. They basically take a set of lizards on islands. So here I have some lizards, and I'm going to control the traits. So you can see I have a naked lizard. I'm going to add some horns and a back crest and make a new lizard. And I'm going to do this for several islands. So here I'm actually playing the role of the designer, basically. This is intelligent design, the theory of intelligent design, if you call it a theory. And then I can run the model, I can basically take data, I'm going to put these lizards in my notebook, I can look at the traits they share, so here we have back crest. So the students are all instructed how to do this. Oops. And what the students find in this case is that the shared traits have no relationship to each other, and they're very randomly arranged when you look at the lizards from all 5 of your islands on your island chain. Sorry, I'm not used to using a Windows machine. This is awesome, but confusing. So, not that I'm displaying any bias here at all. So anyway, then what we have the students do, after they've kind of developed their notebook with patterns that they can find. Oh, see, that's a fun one with the spots. So they take little tools and they can draw around here and make notes, type in little boxes. So basically it's everything you would do in a notebook if you were out on a chain of islands, basically exploring the organisms that you're finding there. So the second thing that we have them do is we have them basically, oops, no, I don't want to reload. We have them look at the same chain of islands with the same lizards, And here we're actually going to have the lizards evolve from a common ancestor. So you see here, I start with lizards just on one island. Then one of these lizards swims across to this island, and maybe in the process, there's a mutation for the development of a frill, and then we keep going, time passes. Then this one swims even further because he's a very strong lizard, develops a back crest, and keeps going and going. And then the students repeat the same experiment where they're bringing lizards onto their notebook and again, looking at the shared traits. In 4 minutes, I'm sorry, I don't have time enough to show you how cool this is, but if any of you want to actually see it, you can come up to me afterwards and take a look at this or some of our other labs. So what they find is that the traits, when the lizards evolve, descent with modification from a common ancestor, the traits form a nested pattern. So you actually don't see randomness in the arrangement of traits in these lizards. And then we have the students actually take a look at real lizards. Well, first they're going to look at some mystery examples. So we basically have set up some examples where we have the lab simulate one or the other, either designer lizards or evolving lizards, and the students are using their new skills to basically apply to real data. Then we have them look at actual fossil records and try to say where, and here I think is where we have these fossil records, where there is concrete evidence for descent with modification from a common ancestor, and where there's ambiguity. Because it certainly is the case that there are cases that scientists are still exploring and trying to determine if there are missing ancestors or how traits might have arisen or not. So this is just an example. We have probably 24 labs. We're actually working on an ecology textbook and an environmental science textbook. So our challenges, so now that you've kind of seen what we do, we have an imagination challenge, which is basically that we have to try to imagine how what does a naive student need to learn a concept from scratch? What does a confused student need in order to dispel a misconception? And now that the internet is so pervasive, unfortunately, there are a lot of misconceptions around science and biology. And so kind of dispelling misconceptions sometimes requires something different from learning new concepts. And third, what do we need to present to advanced students to keep them stimulated? And how do we, so those are basically our imagination challenges. Our creativity challenges, how do we design a tool that effectively meets all of those needs? And our innovation challenges, how do we appropriately use technology? How do we build this? What is the form of the model? What does the design look like? How's it going to run? How are we going to distribute it to students? Are we going to make an iPad application? Are we going to put it over the web? What works for teachers and teachers who have drastically different access to technology? So those are the major thrusts in my field. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Susan. So it's already clear that our tight deadlines inhibit creativity. So I'm going to be, I couldn't interrupt that. Come on, that was cool. And at some point, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the lizards develop opposable thumbs, is my understanding as well. Thank you very much, Susan. We'll move on. The question, Brigitte, is how do you experience imagination, creativity, and innovation in your field?
Good morning. Hi, everyone. So I am so fortunate that as Business Development Director of Missoula Economic Partnership, I get to interact on a daily basis with some of the most amazingly talented, creative, imaginative people on the planet. And those are Missoula's entrepreneurs. It's a great job, what can I say? Every day I interact with people from James Stevens, how do you say it? You rot things for a living?
Yeah.
Right?
You stole my line.
Right, sorry about that. To Kathy Humphreys, who's a university professor here who started Good Nutrition Ideas, and everybody in between. Myriad people that are trying to turn their creativity into a business. As I'm sure many of you know, Missoula Economic Partnership has 4 main goals, and that's the creation of 2,500 primary jobs, bringing in 25 best fit companies, $150 million in capital investment, and fostering the growth of 25 startups. We feel so strongly that startups are key to our success in job creation that we have created a couple different programs to help support our creative entrepreneurial individuals in Missoula, and I'll just take a couple minutes, 2.42 minutes, to discuss that right now. The Innovation Initiative is one example of a program that we're doing to support our entrepreneurs in this community. The genesis of this was a couple months back, probably 4 months back or so at this point. Folks from Missoula Economic Partnership, Hellgate Venture Network, and the University of Montana started having a dialogue. What can we do right now in our actual world, is that what our keynote said, to support our entrepreneurs in this community and to give them the greatest probability of success? How do we use the assets we have right now? Might not be perfect, but it's something to support. So what that program currently looks like is there's open, shared space available at the Montech facility for entrepreneurs to come in and interact with their peers, interact with mentors, interact with experts, to really drill down and have dialogue about their business and really to try to move their growth trajectory forward in having dialogue with other entrepreneurs. That's open Wednesday evenings and Thursday mornings. By the way, it's open and available to any entrepreneur that's interested in utilizing it. We'll also be rolling in some structured sessions with experts. So we anticipate the creativity that will show up there will even, those creative people will have an opportunity to work and collaborate with each other and generate more business, is our hope. The second piece of that is also an online component. So you will see that coming out this summer, an online extension of this innovation initiative where our entrepreneurs can get together and learn from each other, learn from mentors. I understand that's something that Missoula County Public Schools is working on quite a bit right now, the mentoring piece. The second piece, when we talk about the continuum of support that we provide to our entrepreneurs to give them the greatest probability of success, second piece we're really working on right now is our angel network. Access to capital for early stage companies and great ideas is always a challenge. So I'm very pleased to announce that actually as of April 3rd, we had our first pitch session. 2 of the 4 companies that presented there have already received funding, and yes, that's great. And the other 2 are still in due diligence with potential investors. We're very excited about these programs, not only because creativity breeds creativity, but the more opportunities that we present to foster collaboration among entrepreneurs, the more successful entrepreneurs we'll have in our community, that stay in our community, the more jobs we'll have in our community, the more we'll be able to keep our children in this community and shaping its future. So that's what we're working on and how we experience creativity. I'm at 4. Man, yeah.
Thank you very much, Brigitte. Mr. Stevens, talk to us about imagination, creativity, and innovation in your world.
Well, I'm going to seem incredibly harsh compared to everybody else with this, but what it comes down to for us is we have 3 major things we have to work with to be innovative, creative, and kind of foster innovation. And we need risk tolerance, we need an acceptance of failure, and we need to draft talent. And that's, I think, it appears to me that it's almost been completely lost on those general aspects. I always joke about risk tolerance because effectively to do a startup, to do new things, to do whatever, you effectively have to be a gambler. You have to have an idea and say, hey, I'm going to go ask people for multiple millions of dollars. And, you don't know if those people are going to be like, oh, okay, it's okay if you fail, or if they're going to hire the mob to get rid of you if you do fail. So, there's always this risk with it. When it comes to interfacing with education, there's a huge risk. Since I relocated the company back to Missoula, I've spent a good 2.5 years now really working heavily on interfacing with the University of Montana, College of Technology, looking at tech transfer opportunities, looking at all of that. And from that angle, I always joke I have 3 rules. Don't light me on fire, don't make me sue you, and don't get me sued. That's it, and one of our students who was an intern, and then we eventually hired him from the College of Technology, did light me on fire. So, it is it's a relevant rule. But what I've found is the best people we're receiving are people from programs that have mandatory internship. College of Technology has a mandatory internship program for their alternative energy program that Brad Layton manages and works with there, and the caliber of students from there have been great. The other aspect for high caliber students I've encountered is people from the journalism department. They have a mandatory, I think it's like 240 hours of internship or something that they have to do before they can even receive their thing. That is awesome. I get students from, say, the science department. They don't know how to do email, they don't know how to do whatever. I usually give the science department a pass because in theory they're training everybody in that program to go on to higher education, go get their PhD, whatever. So, occasionally I can give them a pass. On the flip side, we receive students from the business program, and they don't know how to compose a proper email, and they're a senior level student or they're an MBA candidate, and that's a problem. The business program has no excuse for students not coming out of that program ready to work in industry because it's a business school. You're going through a business program to go into industry. So, that's one of the things that I've encountered lately, kind of interfacing with it, and that goes to drafting talent. As far as I'm concerned, it is the university and school system's responsibility to select that talent for me. Right now, I have an internship program. It doesn't matter whether you're a high school dropout or a PhD with 20 years of experience. Everybody interns for 3 months. Period. Do you want to work with us? You intern with us because we have to do that screening that I feel that the university and education system should be doing. And that goes back kind of to that one point that I was talking about as an acceptance of failure. As a society, I think we've created a culture where failure is not okay. And grade school students and high school students and college students, it's not about, bringing the best people forward and screening people out who may or may not be suitable for those roles. It's about just pushing everybody through the system, and that leaves that screening up to me. Everybody jokes about my training style, which is, blindfold people, kick them in the head and throw them upside down in the deep end of the pool. If they swim to the top, they succeed and move forward. That works for me because I have to go through this process to get the smartest people I can. But as a business leader in the community, it's really hard to employ people if you're expecting project-ready people to be coming out, shovel-ready, we'll use the president's term. There's not shovel-ready students coming out. When I graduated from the University of Montana, first thing they made me do when I got into industry, they made me take a 4-hour Outlook Express course to learn how to do email, because I didn't know how to do email when I left the university. That's something that should just be automatic. Train everybody on how to do email, Word, Excel, all that kind of stuff. Basic fundamental training that should be done is not being done. And that's a problem from a business perspective. So when I look at that, for us, it's risk tolerance, it's an acceptance of failure, and it's drafting talent.
You have 2 seconds left, James.
That's good enough, I think.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Mr. McGill, how do you experience imagination, creativity, and innovation in your field?
Thank you, John. My field really encompasses the performing arts, but especially where it intersects in child development. So I'd like to talk about how that goes together. We are in a revolution, and most of it's pushed by the technological expanses that we've had in recent years, and that's leading the way, but it's rewiring our world, as you all know, and it's also rewiring our brains. I think that children think differently than they used to. And that's an exciting proposition, but it's also one of those things that you go, where's it going? One of the things I want to emphasize is the fact that I feel like that the arts is an integral part of education. It is something that needs to be part of the way we teach. I would argue that one of the casualties of the economic downturn, if you will, is that the arts became funded less. It became kind of a fringe educational device, and I think it's got to go back to the forefront. I would cite, there's the President's Committee on the Arts and the Humanities. They've just completed an 18-month study, and I'd just like to read a little bit of that because I think it says it better than I do. The results of the committee's conviction that the arts education provides a critical benefit to the private sector. In order to effectively compete in the global economy, Business leaders are increasingly looking for employees who are creative, collaborative, and innovative thinkers. A greater investment in the arts is an effective way to equip today's students with the skills that they will need to succeed in the jobs of tomorrow. The value of the arts education is often phrased in enrichment terms, helping kids find their voice, rounding out their education, and tapping into their undiscovered talents. This is true, but as the President's Committee saw in schools all over the country, it is also an effective tool in school-wide reform and fixing some of our biggest educational challenges. And I love this quote, "It is not a flower, it's a wrench." So how do we experience imagination in our field? Children are the masters of imagination. We just have to let them run with that. I feel like in some ways technology has kind of stepped into that and allowed them to imagine through their screens and things like that, and that's a powerful tool. But they also have another tool that I think that we have to really push for, and that is that they can step into a role, into a drama, into a song, into a movement piece, and in that way they take on the first-person perspective, and they interact with their ideas viscerally. And I think that's an important thing not to lose. Secondly, how do you experience creativity? In so many ways, by the interpretations of songs, or starting with a blank slate and just saying, okay, where do we go from here? You can create, and having a guided teacher-oriented, take them through the steps that it takes to make it to the next step. And lastly, how do you experience innovation? Innovate to introduce as if new. Well, every performance has a degree of that, a dropped line or something like that. But to innovate means to go forward with whatever thing you're trying to get across to your audience, and it's to communicate in that way, because after all, performance art is a communication language and incorporates all of the essential human strengths of imagination, creativity, and innovation. So we can speak to each other in a kind of a holistic way that engages the senses, the emotions, and the intellect, as it has from our earliest history. So we don't want to lose that. We want to incorporate technology with the arts. We want to use them both.
Thank you very much. Michael? And our second question is, what do students in the 21st and 22nd century need to be career ready in your field? Susan, you want to start?
Yes, and because I went over on my first question, I'll go under on this one. In fact, I had a bunch of stuff prepared, but as I'm listening to everybody, I'm just kind of coming up with a new idea of how to present what we need in the field of technological development, which is, so, you guys have seen a little bit of what we do. Putting that together takes a truly collaborative effort, and I know this conference is really all about collaboration, and I don't think that any of the people in Symbio were at all taught or trained or encouraged to work collaboratively before they entered the workforce. So I don't really know, and I'm not versed in kind of what is being fostered in the schools of education and thought. But I would challenge us all to try to figure out how to develop people's collaboration skills. And it involves communication, not just writing and speaking, but listening and using logic, forming arguments, playing a role. We kind of heard that come up before. This idea of internship, mandatory internship, is thrilling to me, because I think there are in education, like traditional education really emphasizes the person's individual skills, what they individually know, what they can individually do. But that can be explosive and wonderful when they are a part of a team. And it would just be really fascinating to see education take that turn. And something I mentioned in my first little spiel that I will again emphasize is that if I could construct a dream world of education, it would include design training for everybody. And I think design is is super useful, whether it's applied to technology, whether it's applied to, set design for plays, whether it's applied to the workplace, or even working in a collaboration. I think the principles of design are something that are just, and I'm coming at this, I'm a scientist. I mean, I'm trained as a physicist, so I didn't learn any design. And I wish I had, I'm fine learning on the job. I think learning on the job is awesome, but I also think that it would be great if those elements could be incorporated into traditional education as well.
It's all about timing.
Good timing, right. The first thing I think that students need in order to succeed, and again, I'll address this from the perspective of being an entrepreneur or working with entrepreneurs, is the ability to communicate effectively in writing as well as verbal communication. Too often, I see students at the college level even who cannot articulate their ideas succinctly and professionally. So what that means as an entrepreneur, if your elevator pitch is not engaging and impactful, or if your executive summary that you've written is not positively distinguished from the dozens or hundreds of others that a potential investor or a banker may be reviewing, you will not be funded. You'll not be able to translate your creativity, your ingenuity into your livelihood. So it's just of paramount importance. The second thing I think students need to be effective entrepreneurs is the ability to make decisions in an imperfect and dynamic environment. Startups are messy. They're confusing, right? Daily decisions have to be made. You're piecing things together. You're bootstrapping. This is probably the most difficult thing to teach in a classroom. And consequently, I think that it's so important that we have programs such as mentoring programs that can help to educate our students in this capacity. I know that Susan is working right now on formalizing a mentoring system for Missoula County Public Schools, and I see huge value in that program. At MEP, we routinely facilitate mentoring business to business. It's of paramount importance. And I just want to take 1 second to congratulate Missoula County Public Schools on your early math curriculum. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old right now, and when my second grader came home with math questions that involved multiple choice answers, and one of the multiple choice answers was not enough information, I was flabbergasted. I said, wow, that's amazingly advanced for a student at this age. And what a favor we're doing our children to teach them that to think holistically about problems and to know that sometimes you don't have enough information and you have to go back and ask and engage other resources to help you in your problem solving. It's just an incredible favor that we're doing our children in our community doing this. We're teaching them so that they don't end up having sort of a decision-making paralysis in the future that will inhibit them from moving their creativity and their business forward, even at that early stage. So good job, kudos there. The final thing I think that schools can do is to provide comprehensive counseling regarding finances and the importance of saving money. I suppose you could argue that that is, should fall squarely on the shoulders of parents, but I think it's a safe bet to say that it's going to take multiple exposures to that idea for it to sink in for students of all ages. I do think there's a large role for Missoula County Public Schools and the university there, whether it's traditional lenders looking at your credit scores or investors determining how much skin you have in the game and invested in your business. You're going to be required as an entrepreneur to sign on the dotted line and to demonstrate your financial stability. And if you want to move your business forward, you have got to be in a position that you have that financial knowledge in the background to help you succeed. You won't be able to turn your entrepreneurial ideas, your creativity into a business unless you have an understanding of these basic concepts. So those are my 3 things.
Thanks, Brashida.
Yep.
James.
So, my first segment there was kind of negative, but I'll go into the positive that can be done and what students can do. And I think, when I went to the university here, student loans weren't easy to get a hold of. You really had to fight to be at the university. So I think the gap where education has become more easily accessible through student loans may have allowed more people to attend college. It's also screened, decrease that screening towards it. And I think the two major things in my field that students need is they need a hunger to actually engage in this field and a passion behind actually wanting to go do something besides just go earn a paycheck. And there needs to be talent there, whatever that talent is. It doesn't necessarily need to be talent in the sciences or talent in business or talent in whatever. Talent is a raw technique, and we can train anybody to understand the science or understand the business aspects, but you can't train talent. You have to draft talent, and that's the biggest thing that we always look for. I mean, that's why we have a diverse population. But I think one of the things is there's entrepreneurs out there who are willing to take the risk with students. We're willing to take the risk and bring a huge amount of students through our system, look at them, and offer them jobs when they're done. Every college technology student that we've had through our program who's done an internship with us has been offered a job. When we came back to Missoula, we had 3 employees who are not Montanans. We now have 19 employees. Everyone new who's been hired is a Montanan. They've gone to they've either gone to Bozeman or they've gone to the University of Missoula, or they've gone through the college technology. So we've made sure, and we made a pledge to recruit from the community, try to draft talent from the community, and start fostering this interface between, education and whatever. I kind of harped on, the basic fundamental university there. But what it comes down to is, we've hired multiple interns from the business school that are now employees with us, from the science department, all that. So we've actually put our money where our mouth is when interfacing. It's not like we've just chewed through interns and used them as, cheap or inexpensive labor to go through the process. When they're done, the people who are acceptable have done it. The flip side is I've also warned people, I will tell your professor to fail you, and I will ask your program to fail you out from the program, because I also think there needs to be, just like everything in life, it's not a zero-sum game. There are winners and losers, and I think the modern education system has lost that concept. I know we've moved away from the everybody gets the trophy and we don't keep score, but in real life, once you get in business, industry, government jobs, contracting, it doesn't matter. There's winners and there's losers. You're going up against your peers to succeed, whether it's to get investment money, whether it's to get your job, whether it's to go off and get a program or get a grant. It's all competitive based, and not instilling that competitive drive in students, especially at the university level, I think is definitely folly, because at the end of the day, when you're competing for resources, either you get them or someone else gets them. And when we look at it from community development, what we want to do is foster a community in Missoula where if we're going after grants or investment money or recruiting business here or whatever, we want everybody who comes through our system here to have that competitive edge to be like, yeah, I'm going to go after this. I'm going to get this grant. I'm going to bring it back to the university for research. I'm going to bring it back to the community for business development. I'm going to go get that investment money, and bring it back into our community, because that's what allows this community to grow and foster and adjust. And I think that interface between business and students is highly important, because really, when I'm looking at it, if I don't have the university system and everything involved with that, creating employees that I can utilize, I'm going to have to bring those people from outside into this community, and Montana has some things going against it if we want to bring people in. We talk about we're a lifestyle city, we're all that. That only goes so far in recruiting unless people have already came here and created a love for that environment, and the university system is where you find those people, or the grade school system because their parents moved here, or whatever. That's how you get people to have this love for the community that'll make them want to come and bring back their 20 years of banking experience or their 10 years of chemical engineering experience from Dow or whatever. That's what you have to do, so that relationship has to be built now.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. And Michael, in your world, what do students in the 21st and 22nd century need to be career ready?
I really think that sometimes we specialize too soon, and I worry that we don't give ourselves a complete foundation if we don't have a well-rounded education at the beginning of life. And I feel, obviously, that the arts are a part of that. Citing that study I cited earlier, there was a couple of longitudinal studies back in the 90s that showed that low-income kids who participated in the arts education were 4 times more likely to have high academic achievement and 3 times more likely to have high attendance than those who didn't. Also, they followed up on those same studies here recently, and they found that trend only increased over time. So it had a huge effect on them. And the conclusion that they came to is that arts-engaged low-income students tend to perform more like high-income students. You know, sometimes I go back to when I was conducting orchestras and stuff, and I oftentimes found myself noticing that I was getting trumpet players that were also doctors of medicine. And I asked myself, now I wonder what came first, the doctor or the musician, because they were wonderful musicians. I think it was the musician. I think that was part of their education that they brought into their later life that became a very important part of who they became and the fullness of their life and their success. I think that they go hand in hand. My experience with MCT in the world has given me a real chance to see how other educational organizations work, how they don't work. But it also gives me a chance to see how our program, when we go into those schools and we give them some of those tools. You know that MCT's mission is not to make little performers or Broadway performers. It's the development of life skills in children through participation in the performing arts. It's really the building blocks of success. That's what we're about, and I think that's what arts education can do. Some of our panelists were talking about how can we teach kids to be more collaborative? How can we teach kids to have teamwork? How can we give them self-esteem that will give them the step into a world that they feel like they have the confidence to take on? And I think that's by giving them goals that we help them to succeed at. Our model is one of those models that works wonderfully well now for 40 years. It's not the only model that needs to be used in the arts, but it's one of those where we walk into a place, the kids have the courage to take on that first step of auditioning. We walk them through a week's worth of really hard work, and at the end of it, they get that ultimate feedback of, there's my mother out there, there's everybody I know in the world applauding for me and giving me the feedback that gives me the courage to try something else, something new. And I think that that's a huge part of what we need in order to give these kids that extra hand up. I want to just give you a really quick case study that I felt like was a great example of how an arts integration system works. There's a fourth grade social studies class in Kensington studied the Great Migration of African Americans at the turn of the century using a theater tableau method and the paintings of Jacob Lawrence. The students were each assigned a painting, grouped into threes, and given 5 minutes to come up with a title, a character, and to arrange themselves into a frozen tableau representing the meaning of the painting. They worked independently in their groups with no further instruction or intervention by the teacher, and formed their tableaus representing African Americans at different stages on the road from bondage to freedom. In turn, each student described their title and character and inner thoughts with a strong grasp of history and nuance. When we asked the classroom teacher how she would have taught this curriculum without arts integration training, she said she probably would have assigned a reading and then tried to get the students to discuss it, which would engage a relatively small percentage of the class who liked to speak up. And I think that's just an example of what is possible if you open your eyes not only to the benefits of technology and how we can use that in order to open the eyes of young people, but also to the effective power of the arts.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, panelists. I have just a couple of quick thoughts before we close the panel. I'm the product of a Norwegian Lutheran household, so I took my first risk when I was 33 years old. I quit my job. And the day I took that risk, which was a big deal for me, is the day that I started down a path of public service, of full engagement in the community, of making change and taking additional risks. And I loved Willard Grade School, where I attended for 8 years. So I occasionally tell Willard Alternative High School Principal Jane Bennett, Willard was actually an alternative high school when I was in grade school there, but we didn't learn risk. We didn't learn how to take a chance. Hellgate High School, another 8 years of, thanks. really didn't learn to take risks. And if there were lessons in risk and failure, those lessons largely came outside of core curriculum. Those risks happened on a stage, or they happened in the student newspaper, or if you had skills that I don't have, they happened on an athletic field. So a piece of this, and one of the messages that I think is critical today, is how do we teach the notion that it's okay to take chances? How do we teach the notion that calculated risk can deliver incredible reward, and how can we teach the lesson that a single failure does not mean that everything you do subsequently will be a failure as well? And while he appears to have been a completely miserable human being, Steve Jobs, as I've discovered in his biography, failed as much as he succeeded. And the other piece of that was, the other piece that I heard Susan talk about in particular, was the notion of design and how design plays out in everything we do. And it took me a long time to sort of understand that design isn't about making things pretty. It's not all HGTV. What design is calculating how to create an environment that makes the most sense to meet the challenge or the problem or the opportunity that's before you. So in the case when you're looking at how you teach a kid evolution, there's a design component there, and as the two council people in the room will acknowledge, we have an incredible reliance on design to make communities. Well-designed communities work well. Design is not a frill. Finally, James, you had suggested that you had been negative in your remarks. That's another piece of business we need to get over. We have to be able to confront one another politely, respectfully, and thoughtfully with the truth, the facts of the matter. And that's not easy, but it's absolutely necessary, because otherwise we will continue to engage in the status quo. We will continue to always do things the way we've been doing them, which is the most miserable excuse I have ever heard, and I hear it all day long, because I work in government, folks, and I'm guilty of it myself occasionally. We all have the potential for taking risks, and we have people who will support us in those risks, and a piece of it is finding those people, surrounding yourself with the talent and the skill to make sure that your calculated risks, if they're failures that teach a lesson and move you forward, and if they're successes you can share and learn from as well. So that is what taking risks and reaching out is all about. Thank you once again to the panel. Give these fine folks a round of applause, please.